22nd, 1941. In the pre-dawn darkness, the largest invasion in human history was unleashed. Over 3 million German soldiers, along with their allies, stormed across the Soviet border. This was Operation Barbarossa. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression treaty signed just 2 years earlier, was torn to shreds. Hitler's goal was audacious and brutal: to crush the Soviet Union in a matter of months, to achieve what he called Lebensraum, or living space, for the German people. He envisioned a swift, decisive blitzkrieg that would bring the communist giant to its knees before the infamous Russian winter could set in. The initial shock was devastating. Stalin, reportedly paralyzed by disbelief, failed to react immediately. The Red Army, caught completely off guard and weakened by the recent purges of its officer corps, was in disarray. German Army Group North raced towards Leningrad. Army Group Center drove relentlessly towards Moscow, and Army Group South pushed deep into the resource-rich lands of Ukraine. The German panzer divisions, like steel sights, cut through Soviet defenses, encircling and capturing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Cities fell one after another. Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, was taken in September after a massive encirclement battle that resulted in over 600,000 Soviet casualties. The situation looked catastrophic for the Soviet Union. The Wehrmacht seemed invincible, an unstoppable force poised to conquer the heart of the nation. By autumn, German troops were on the very outskirts of Moscow, with some officers claiming they could see the Kremlin's spires through their binoculars. But then, something began to change. The blitzkrieg, so effective on the plains of Poland and France, started to falter. The vastness of the Soviet Union itself was a formidable enemy. Supply lines stretched to the breaking point. Soviet resistance, though initially chaotic, grew fiercer with each mile the Germans advanced. The scorched earth policy, ordered by Stalin, left nothing for the invaders to seize. And then came Russia's greatest ally, General Winter. In late 1941, the temperatures plummeted. German equipment, not designed for the extreme cold, froze solid. Tanks wouldn't start, guns wouldn't fire, and soldiers, still in their summer uniforms, suffered terribly from frostbite. It was in this brutal cold that the Battle of Moscow began. The Red Army, bolstered by fresh divisions, transferred from Siberia troops, well equipped for winter warfare, dug in. Under the command of Marshal Georgy Zhukov, they defended the capital with a ferocity born of desperation. Civilians, including women and children, dug anti-tank ditches and built fortifications around the city. The slogan "Not one step back" became a national rallying cry. In early December, Zhukov launched a massive counteroffensive. The exhausted and frozen German forces were caught by surprise. For the first time in World War II, the German army was not just stopped, but thrown back, pushed hundreds of kilometers away from the capital. The myth of German invincibility was shattered in the snows outside Moscow. Hitler's dream of a quick victory was over. The war in the East was to become a long, grinding war of attrition. After the failure at Moscow, Hitler needed a new strategy for 1942. He turned his attention south, towards the rich oil fields of the Caucasus. Securing this oil was vital for Germany's war machine. On the path to the Caucasus lay a city on the Volga River, a city that bore Stalin's name, Stalingrad. Hitler became obsessed with capturing it, not just for its strategic value, but for its symbolic importance. The German Sixth Army, under General Friedrich Paulus, was tasked with taking the city. What followed was one of the most brutal and horrific battles in the history of warfare. The battle for Stalingrad wasn't fought in open fields, but in the ruins of the city itself. It was a war of snipers, street-to-street fighting, and hand-to-hand combat in sewers, basements, and shattered apartment blocks. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg, Rat War. Every building, every floor, every room was a fortress to be conquered. The average life expectancy of a new soldier arriving at the front was less than 24 hours. Both sides poured men and materiel into this meat grinder. The Luftwaffe bombed the city into a sea of rubble. But this ironically provided even more defensive positions for the Soviet 62nd Army, led by the tenacious general Vasily Chukov's strategy was to hug the enemy, keeping his front lines as close to the Germans as possible to neutralize their superiority in air power and artillery. Soviet soldiers and civilians alike fought with unimaginable courage, defending their city to the last breath. The Mamayev Kurgan, a hill overlooking the city, changed hands multiple times, its soil so saturated with shrapnel and blood that it was said to contain more metal than earth. The grain elevator, the tractor factory, Pavlov's house, these names became legendary symbols of dogged resistance. While the German Sixth Army was being bled white in the streets of Stalingrad, Marshal Zhukov was planning something audacious. In November 1942, as winter once again began to set in, the Red Army launched Operation Uranus. This was a massive pincer movement, striking at the weaker Romanian and Hungarian forces, protecting the German flanks far to the north and south of the city. The plan worked perfectly. The two Soviet fronts met at the town of Kalak, snapping the trap shut. General Paulus and his entire Sixth Army, numbering nearly 300,000 men, were completely inspired. Hitler, in a fit of delusion, forbade any attempt to break out, promising to supply the trapped army by air. But the Luftwaffe's air bridge was a catastrophic failure, unable to deliver even a fraction of the necessary supplies in the harsh winter conditions. Inside the pocket, the German soldiers faced starvation, disease, and the relentless cold. They were trapped in a frozen hell of their own making. By January 1943, their situation was hopeless. On January 31st, General Paulus, recently promoted to field marshal by Hitler in a desperate bid to prevent him from surrendering, was captured in the basement of a department store. A few days later, the last pockets of resistance gave up. Of the nearly 300,000 men encircled, only about 91,000 survived to surrender. And of those, only around 5,000 would ever see Germany again. The Battle of Stalingrad was over. The victory at Stalingrad was more than just a military triumph. It was the psychological turning point of the Second World War. For the Soviet Union, it was a symbol of their incredible resilience and sacrifice, a victory that electrified the nation and the Allied world. For Nazi Germany, it was an unprecedented disaster, a wound from which the Third Reich would never recover. The strategic initiative on the Eastern Front had shifted decisively. From this point forward, the Red Army would be on the offensive, beginning the long, bloody road to Berlin. The tide of war had turned, and the fate of Hitler's empire was sealed in the rubble and snow of a city on the Volga. Thank you for watching. If you found this look into one of history's most pivotal conflicts interesting, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the past. See you next time.